Echoes of love. The chapel smelled of beeswax and old money. I pressed my shoulder against the cold stone pillar, watching through the crack in the oak door as candlelight threw dancing shadows across the altar. Elliot Prescott stood with his back to me, turning something small and wooden over in his elegant fingers. The blessed token, the one that would final after 3 years of waiting allow our wedding to proceed. His grandmother's portrait hung above the altar, her painted eyes watching over generations of Prescott marriages. I had stood beneath that portrait a dozen times, drawing lots from the silver bowl, always pulling the cursed sign, always told the ancestors hadn't blessed our union. The highest blessing, Elliot murmured, and my heart surged until I saw him frown. He turned the token over, turned it again. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and produced a different token marked with a single black line, the cursed sign. He swapped them. My fingernails bit into my palms. 3 years. 3 years of learning which fork to use at dinner. Of softening my Montana vowels until they disappeared. Of pretending I belonged in rooms full of people who looked through me like I was made of glass. 3 years of loving a face that reminded me of someone I'd lost. If Ivy marries me, Elliot said to no one, his voice barely above a whisper, what happens to Serena? Serena, his brother's widow. Same as always. He slipped the blessed token into his pocket and placed the cursed one in the silver bowl. We postpone again. Ivy can wait. She has nothing but time. He said it like a fact. Like I was a piece of furniture that would stay exactly where he'd placed me until he decided otherwise. I didn't burst through the door. I didn't scream or cry or demand answers. Instead, I walked back to my room on silent feet and began to pack. There was a red-eye flight out of JFK, a documentary crew heading to the Texas border, looking for a journalist willing to cover the counter-narcotics operations that most reporters were too smart or too scared to touch. And somewhere in that remote territory, a group of DEA agents was returning from deep cover. 7 years under. I didn't let myself hope anyway. Hope was a luxury I'd buried years ago, but I wanted to ask them something. Just ask. Had any of them ever met a man named Weston Reed? I should tell you how I ended up here. Not in the chapel, watching my fiancé betray me. That came later. I mean, here in this gilded cage on the Connecticut coast, surrounded by people who measured worth in generations and real estate. My grandfather found me in a cardboard box by a river in Montana when I was 3 days old. No note, no name, just a baby wrapped in a gas station blanket crying at the January sky. He was a Vietnam veteran who'd lost his wife and most of his faith in the fall of Saigon. He'd made it through the chaos of those final days with one friend, a young corporal named Henry Prescott. They'd survived things together that neither of them ever spoke about, and somewhere in the horror, they'd made a pact. If they made it home, if they ever built something worth having, their families would be joined. Henry Prescott came home and built an empire. My grandfather came home and found me. He raised me on a small ranch outside Helena, taught me to ride before I could read, to shoot before I could drive, to survive on nothing but stubbornness and spite. And he told me stories about the war, about honor, about a promise between 2 soldiers that had outlasted everything else. When he was dying of lung cancer in a VA hospital in Billings, he held my hand with fingers that had once disassembled an M16 in under a minute and said, "Go to them, Ivy. The Prescotts are good people. When I'm gone, you'll have someone." He didn't know what I'd already lost. I never told him about Weston's empty urn, the blood-stained medal, the message that came 4 years into a 7-year silence. "We regret to inform you. Grandpa sent me to the Prescotts because he was afraid of what I might do alone. He'd seen the darkness in me after Weston's memorial. He knew." I drove to Greenwich planning to refuse the engagement politely, then drive my car off the Tappan Zee Bridge on the way home. Then I saw Elliot's face. He was standing in the foyer of the Prescott estate, backlit by afternoon sun, and for one impossible second, I forgot how to breathe. The angle of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead. The small mole near his left eye that I would have sworn was identical to Weston's. "Miss Sterling?" He extended his hand, and even his voice was close. Not the same Weston's had been rougher, shaped by Montana winters, but close enough to crack something open in my chest. I didn't drive off the bridge that night. Instead, I clung to a resemblance like a drowning woman gripping driftwood, and I let myself pretend. Chapter 2. I discovered the photographs the day before the chapel. Elliot's study had always been off-limits. In 3 years of living in the East Wing, I'd never been inside. When the housekeeper needed something delivered to him, she always knocked and waited to be admitted. When I brought him tea in the evenings, I left it on the hall table outside his door. But that afternoon, I heard his voice drifting through a crack in the door laughing. Warm in a way he never was with me, and something pulled me closer. The door was ajar just wide enough to see inside. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, overlapping like scales, all of the same woman, Serena Prescott, his brother's widow. Reading in the garden with afternoon light catching her hair, playing piano by the window, her profile soft against the glass. And in one photograph larger than the others, hung directly across from his desk, Elliot stood behind her on a swing, both of them laughing with their heads thrown back, frozen in a moment of pure joy. I had never seen him laugh like that. "You're not serious." The voice came from his phone, tinny through the speaker. "Elliot, that's insane, she's your sister-in-law." "So what if she is?" Elliot's voice was soft, almost dreamy. "James is gone, he's been gone for 5 years, and Serena needs someone to take care of her." "Then why the engagement? Why string along this girl from Montana for 3 years?" Elliot laughed. It was a small, ugly sound. "Ivy? She's perfect, actually. My grandfather insists on honoring this ridiculous promise with her family, and I can't refuse without breaking his heart. But if I marry her, she becomes Serena's companion, a built-in caretaker, and I have every excuse in the world to visit." That's his friend paused. "That's genuinely fucked up." "Is it?" Ivy agreed to this engagement herself. "She's obsessed with May. You should see the way she looks at me, like I'm something holy. She cries sometimes just from staring at my face." He laughed again. "I'll be a decent husband. I'll give her everything except love. She's an orphan with no family, no connections. Once she has children, her whole world will revolve around them. And if she finds out? Who would she tell? She has no one." I stood frozen in the hallway, the tea tray trembling in my hands. He was right. I had no one. I had looked at his face for 3 years and seen a ghost, and I had let that ghost make me stupid. "Why keep postponing the wedding then?" his friend asked. A long pause. When Elliot spoke again, his voice was hollow. "Because I'm not ready to be someone's husband, someone's father. I want to stay just Elliot for a little longer. Just the man who loves her." I set the tea tray down on the hall table without a sound. Then I walked back to my room and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, while something inside me calcified into stone. There had never been any ancestors' disapproval. There had never been any cursed lots. There was only Elliot Prescott, who had never wanted me at all. Let me tell you about Weston. He wasn't my grandfather's biological grandson any more than I was his granddaughter. He appeared at the ranch 3 months after me, another foundling, another castaway. The state had pulled him from a foster home, where the details were bad enough that no one would speak them aloud, and my grandfather had taken one look at the silent, hollow-eyed boy and said, "He stays." We grew up like twins, shared a room until we were 12 because neither of us could sleep alone without nightmares. Learned to ride on the same stubborn mare, got our first black eyes defending each other from the same schoolyard bullies. He was my protector, my best friend, my entire world compressed into one person. When we were 17, he kissed me behind the barn during a thunderstorm, and I understood what all the songs were about. He joined the DEA straight out of college, top of his class at Quantico, recruited for a specialized unit. The work was classified, the assignments dangerous, but he came home when he could. And every time he left, he held me in the doorway and said the same thing: "Wait for me." 7 years ago, he left for a deep cover assignment and didn't come back. No letters, no calls, not even a coded message through the channels we'd established. Just silence, stretching into months and then years, until a colleague appeared at my door holding an empty urn and a blood-stained Street Michael medal. "We found this where he fell," she said, pressing the medal into my palm. "His last words were for you: keep moving forward, don't look back." I screamed until my voice broke. Then I drove to the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., and walked the last 50 miles on blistered feet. A priest there blessed a rosary for me, and I wore those beads against my heart every day for 3 years. They were the only thing that kept me tethered to the world. The voice recording on my old phone, "Hey, it's me. I'm probably somewhere I can't talk, but I'm thinking of you. Always," became my lifeline. I played it every night before I fell asleep, letting his voice chase away the darkness. And then I saw Elliot Prescott's face, and I thought maybe I could survive a little longer. I was wrong about so many things, but I was right about one: pretending has limits. Chapter 3. I removed the pearl earrings Elliot had given me for his birthday last year and left them on my windowsill, where the morning light would catch them. Then I called my editor at the network. "The border assignment," I said without preamble. "I'll take it." A pause. "Ivy, it's dangerous, cartel territory. The DEA's wrapping up a 7-year operation and the remnants are—" "I know. Are you sure?" I looked around the guest room that had been mine for 3 years. The antique furniture I'd been afraid to scratch. The silk curtains I'd been afraid to stain. The person I'd become, afraid of everything. I've never been more sure of anything. I was crossing the garden with my suitcase when I heard Serena's voice. "Going somewhere, Ivy?" She stood in the gazebo, wrapped in a white cashmere shawl that probably cost more than my grandfather's truck. Her nephew, a boy of about 10, the son of some distant Prescott cousin, sat beside her, playing with something on the bench. My phone, my rosary beads. "Put those down," my voice came out cold and flat. "Now." The boy looked at Serena, who smiled. "Dylan, darling, I told you everything in this house belongs to us. Those are mine." Dylan's face twisted. My aunt says you're nobody. She says you don't belong here. He smashed my phone against the flagstones. The screen shattered. The battery popped loose. And somewhere in that broken device, Weston's voice, the only recording I had of him, went silent forever. Oops, Dylan grinned. If I can't have it, no one can. I slapped him. Not hard enough, but he screamed like I'd branded him, clutching his cheek while blood trickled from his nose. Serena pulled him into her arms, her mask of sweetness cracking to reveal something sharp and gleaming underneath. He's a child, she hissed. How dare you? You put him up to this. I slapped her too. Her hair fell loose from its careful arrangement. Her eyes went wild. Yes, she spat. Yes, I told him to do it. Why does the old man love you so much? Why does someone like you get to marry into this family? Elliot is mine. I'll be the only woman in this house. Dylan charged at me from behind, headbutting my stomach. I stumbled and fell hard on the flagstones, and he grabbed the rosary beads and yanked. The string snapped. Beads scattered across the stone, some rolling into the fountain, some disappearing into the grass. 50 miles of blistered feet, the only blessing I had left of Weston, gone. Without thinking, I waded into the fountain's icy water, searching for them with numb fingers. Ivy, Elliot's voice thundered across the garden. What the hell are you doing? He grabbed my wrist and hauled me out. His eyes swept over Serena's reddened cheek, Dylan's bloody nose, and his expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Have you lost your mind? You hit a child? He destroyed. I don't care what he destroyed. You hit him, and you struck Serena. He was shaking with rage. Apologize, now. I pulled my hand free and knelt to gather the beads, one by one, patient, deliberate. For some cheap trinkets, Elliot said, his voice dripping with contempt. You assault my family? When I'd found the last bead, 17 of them, clutched in my palm like tiny prayers, I stood up and looked at the man I'd wasted 3 years pretending to love. Then I slapped him. You love her so much? I said quietly. Then marry her. Stop using fake traditions to string me along. Stop making me your cover story. Serena went white. Elliot touched his cheek, stunned. What are you? Your study is wallpapered with her photographs. You switched a blessed token for a cursed one because you didn't want to marry me. Tell me I'm wrong. He couldn't. Coward. I walked away without looking back. Chapter 4. I went to old Mr. Prescott before I left. He was in his greenhouse, watering orchids with hands that trembled slightly from age. At 92, Henry Prescott still had the bearing of the soldier he'd once been, straight spine, clear eyes, a quiet authority that made people listen when he spoke. Ivy, he smiled when he saw me. Come to help an old man with his flowers? I've come to break the engagement. His hand trembled harder, splashing water across the potting table. He set down the watering can carefully and turned to face me. Did that boy hurt you? No, we're simply not right for each other. I hesitated. I should tell you the truth. I never loved him. Not once in 3 years. I only stayed because my voice caught. Because he reminded me of someone I lost. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took my hand. Your grandfather told me about Weston, he said gently, in his last letter. He said you'd been through something terrible and he was afraid for you. He squeezed my fingers. That's why I was so happy when you agreed to come. I thought maybe we could help you heal. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm sorry I lied to you. You didn't lie, child. You survived, he sighed. But there's something you should know before you go, something about Elliot. He led me to a worn leather chair and sat down heavily, gesturing for me to take the one beside him. Elliot has a twin brother, Brennan. He was kidnapped from a park in Boston when they were 4 years old. Henry's voice was steady, but his eyes were distant, lost in old grief. We searched for 30 years. Private investigators, DNA databases, everything money could buy. Last month, we finally got a match. My heart stuttered. You found him? We think so. The DNA came through a law enforcement database. He's apparently been working undercover for a federal agency. But we haven't been able to make contact yet. He paused. The resemblance you saw in Elliot. If Brennan looks anything like his brother, the similarity would be even stronger. Identical twins, after all. I sat very still, my mind racing. What was Brennan's birth name? I asked. Before the kidnapping? Just Brennan, Brennan Prescott. He gave me a curious look. Why? Not Weston. Of course not Weston. I stood and bent to kiss his weathered cheek. Thank you for everything, Mr. Prescott. Take care of yourself. Ivy. He caught my hand. Whatever you're looking for out there, I hope you find it. Chapter 5. The flight landed in a dusty airstrip in South Texas, where the heat shimmered off the tarmac like something living. A liaison officer met me at the terminal, a grizzled man with sun-damaged skin and eyes that had seen too much. Miss Sterling, welcome to the frontier. Hope you packed light, we've got a long drive ahead. The documentary was supposed to cover Operation Rattlesnake, a 7-year infiltration of the Mendoza cartel that had finally culminated in a massive takedown, arrests, seizures. The kind of victory that would make headlines for a day before America forgot and moved on to the next crisis. "The agents are being debriefed now," the officer said as we drove through scrubland that seemed to stretch to infinity. 7 years under, can you imagine? 7 years of pretending to be someone else, knowing that one wrong word could get you killed. I could imagine. I'd spent 3 years pretending myself. "Any casualties?" I asked. "Some. The ones who didn't make it," he shook his head. "Their names won't be on any wall. Their families will never know what really happened. That's the job." The interview site was a converted warehouse on the outskirts of a border town. Armed guards at every entrance, satellite dishes on the roof, the kind of place that officially didn't exist. I was setting up my equipment when the door opened and a man walked in. He was weathered, scarred, exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. A fresh wound ran down his left cheek, held together with butterfly bandages. I knew him. "Garrett?" He blinked, and then a smile broke across his battered face. "Little Ivy? Holy shit." Garrett Cole, Weston's college roommate. The one who used to steal cookies from our kitchen and crash on our couch during winter break, who taught me to shoot pool and swore he'd dance at our wedding. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt. "Jesus, Ivy, what are you doing here?" "Covering the story." I pulled back to look at him. "What happened to your face?" He touched the scar and shrugged. "Close call. Nearly lost my eye." He said it like it was nothing the way all of them said it, the ones who came back. "Did Weston?" I had to start again. "Did he ever work with you on any of this?" Garrett's face changed. The easy smile faded. "Ivy," he said quietly, "I know what happened. I'm sorry. He was the best of us. I keep hoping someone will tell me he's still alive, that it was all a cover story. I wish I could." He put his hand on my shoulder. "But if he could see how brave you've becoming out here doing this work, he'd be proud." We did the interview. Garrett talked about 7 years of living a lie, of becoming someone else so completely that he'd started to forget who he really was. He talked about the friends he'd lost, the lines he'd had to cross, the weight of it all. When it was over, he squeezed my shoulder one more time. "I've got one more assignment, then I'm out. When I'm back, dinner's on me. Somewhere with real food, not MREs. Deal." As his Jeep pulled away in a cloud of dust, he rolled down the window and called out, "Ivy?" I turned. Live well. For him, see the world he couldn't. Chapter 6. We spent 10 days in the region, gathering footage and testimonies. I interviewed agents who had spent years undercover, their identities so deeply buried that some of them had trouble remembering their real names. I documented the seizures warehouses full of drugs that would have flooded American streets, enough to kill thousands. I met the families of the ones who hadn't made it, who sat in small rooms with folded flags and medals that couldn't bring back what they'd lost. And I started to understand something. Weston had chosen this, not because he didn't love me, but because he believed some things were worth dying for, and protecting people was one of them. I could honor that, even if it broke my heart. On our last day, as we prepared to move deeper into the mountains for the final phase of filming, a familiar figure appeared at the camp. Elliot. He looked terrible, unshaven, sleepless, his designer clothes wrinkled and stained with dust. A fresh cut on his forehead was held together with medical tape, and he moved like someone who had spent days on planes and buses and the backs of trucks. "What are you doing here?" I said flatly. "I came to find you." He looked broken in a way I'd never seen before. "You left with I didn't know where." "You knew exactly where. Your grandfather told you." "Ivy." He stepped closer. "I know what you heard. I know what you think of me, but I need you to understand." "Understand what? That you used me as a cover for your obsession with your brother's widow?" I laughed bitterly. "I already understand that, Elliot. I understood it the moment I saw your study." "You never loved me either." His voice cracked. 3 years, Ivy. 3 years of devotion, and you were pretending the whole time. You only stayed because I look like him." I met his eyes. Yes. He flinched like I'd hit him. "We used each other," I said quietly. "You used me as a cover for Serena. I used your face as a substitute for Weston. We're even." "Even?" His voice rose. "Do you know how it feels to be someone's substitute? To realize every time she looked at you, every time she touched you, she was thinking of someone else? About the same as being someone's cover story, I imagine." "Miss Sterling," my colleague called from the production van. "We need to move. Weather's coming." I looked at Elliot one last time. "Go home, take care of your grandfather. And for God's sake, figure out what you actually want because right now you don't have a clue." I climbed into the van without looking back. Chapter 7. The gunfire started at dusk. We were wrapping up an interview in a remote border town when the first shots cracked through the evening air. Screams, chaos, people running in every direction. "Get down!" The tactical commander pushed me behind a concrete barrier. "Stay here." But I could see the warehouse across the street, and I could see the man in the doorway, cornered remnants of the Mendoza cartel, making a last stand. He had a hostage, an elderly local man, terrified and shaking, and strapped to the cartel soldier's chest were enough explosives to level the block. "We need to create a distraction," someone said. "Get his attention off the hostage." "I'll go." The words were out before I could think. "I'm press, non-threatening. I've done hostage interviews before." The commander hesitated. "It's too dangerous." "So is waiting." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I raised my hands and walked slowly toward the warehouse. The evening light cast long shadows across the dusty street. Somewhere behind me, I could sense the tactical team moving into position. And on the ridge to my left, I caught a glimpse of a sniper prone, masked, rifle steady. For one impossible second, our eyes met through his scope. My heart stopped. "Stop right there!" The gunman's voice was high, panicked. He pressed the pistol harder against the old man's temple. "One more step and I blow us all up." I forced myself to focus. "I'm just a journalist, I'm not armed, see?" I turned slowly, showing him my empty hands. "You want to survive, I understand that. I can help you get across the border." "You're lying." "I'm not." I took another step forward. "But you need to let him go. He's just a civilian, he's not worth anything to you." The gunman's eyes darted between me and the street behind me. His hand was shaking. Behind my back, I counted down with my fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2. He lunged at me, pressing the gun to my temple. I ducked and drove my elbow into his jaw hard, the way Weston had taught me years ago on the ranch hand. The sniper's shot cracked through the air. The gunman dropped. I ran, not toward safety, toward the ridge. I scrambled up the rocky slope, my hands scraping against stone. The sniper was already packing up, preparing to withdraw. "Wait!" He froze. "Please." I was gasping for air. "Let me see your face." He didn't turn around. I walked around to face him, reaching for his tactical mask. His hand shot out and caught my wrist. "Of course, a stranger, another disappointment, another." "Still crying," he said quietly. "Even now." His voice. I looked up. He was wiping my tears with his free hand. Then slowly he removed his mask. The face I'd dreamed of for 7 years. The small mole at the corner of his eye. The scar on his chin from when we were 12 and he fell off the barn roof trying to impress me. "Weston." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "You're alive?" "I'm here." I collapsed against him, shaking so hard I couldn't stand. He held me tighter than he ever had, and I felt his whole body trembling too. "I'm sorry," he whispered against my hair. "God, Ivy, I'm so sorry I made you wait so long." Chapter 8. Later, in a DEA safe house somewhere in the desert, he told me everything. The explosion that was supposed to kill him had been staged a necessary death to establish his deep cover. The medal, the urn, the mess is all part of an elaborate fiction designed to protect me and Grandpa from cartel retaliation. "If they knew I had anyone," he said quietly, "they would have used you to get to me, so I had to disappear, completely." For 7 years, he'd lived as someone else, built relationships with murderers, witnessed things that would haunt him forever, all to gather the evidence needed to bring down the entire network. "I thought about you every day," he said. "Every time I wanted to give up, and there were so many times I remembered you were out there somewhere. That's what kept me alive." I was crying again. I couldn't stop. "And you," he said, a ghost of his old smile appearing. "Running into gunfire? Who taught you to be so reckless?" "You did." He laughed, really laughed, for the first time, and the sound cracked something open in my chest. I took the rosary beads from my pocket, the 17 I'd managed to save, restrung on fishing line, and slipped them onto his wrist. "I held onto these for 7 years, now they're back where they belong." He pulled me close. "There's something else," he said. "The DNA database that helped them track me down, it also matched me to another family." I pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I was kidnapped when I was 4, raised in foster care under a different name." He paused. "My birth name was Brennan Prescott." The world tilted. "Elliot's twin brother." "Yes." I started to laugh, half hysterical, half relieved. "All this time, the reason he looked so much like you." Identical twins. I wasn't crazy. Tears were streaming down my face. I wasn't seeing ghosts. I was seeing your face in his the whole time. Weston cupped my face in his hands. "I'm glad he existed. I'm glad there was something that kept you holding on, even if it was just a resemblance." He kissed my forehead. "But I'm the real thing now. No more substitutes." Chapter 9. We got our marriage license in Santa Fe before we reached the East Coast. The courthouse was small, the ceremony quick, the rings simple silver bands from a shop on the plaza. But when Weston slipped the ring onto my finger and said, "I'm never leaving again," I knew it was the truest promise I'd ever been given. Old Mr. Prescott wept when he saw us. He was in his greenhouse again, watering his orchids, when we appeared in the doorway. For a long moment, he just stared at Weston, at the face that was so like Elliot's but also utterly different. Then his knees buckled and Weston caught him. "Brennan?" Henry whispered, touching Weston's face with trembling fingers. My boy, my boy." "I go by Weston now," he said gently. "But yes, I'm your grandson." I knew it. The old man was laughing and crying at the same time. "I always said Ivy was meant for this family. The lots were right all along." I stepped out to give them privacy and found Elliot waiting in the hallway. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his clothes disheveled, and there was something broken in his expression that I'd never seen before. "Is it true?" His voice was raw. "He's my brother?" "Yes." He held up a wooden token, the blessed sign he'd hidden so many times. "I asked the ancestors if you were meant to be a Prescott bride. Every single time the answer was yes." He laughed brokenly. "I thought I was asking about me, but it was him. It was always him." I met his eyes without flinching. "You need to let this go, Elliot. Whatever you thought you felt for Mike wasn't real. You said it yourself. I was convenient. A cover story." "I know what I said." His jaw tightened. "But somewhere in those 3 years, something changed. Watching you try so hard. Seeing you cry over things I didn't understand." He paused. "I started to care. I just didn't realize it until you were gone." "That's not love, Elliot. That's regret." "What's the difference?" I thought about that for a moment. Love doesn't require losing someone first. It's there in the ordinary days, not just the dramatic moments. I paused. "What happened to Serena?" His face hardened. "Gone. After you left, grandfather discovered what she'd been doing, the manipulation, the scheming. She'd been playing everyone for years." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out she was never in love with me either. She just wanted to control the family fortune." "I'm sorry. Are you?" "Yes, I meant it. You deserved better than that, so did I." Footsteps behind me. Weston appeared, his hand settling on my shoulder. "Everything okay here?" Elliot stared at his twin, at the face that was his mirror, worn differently by 30 years of different lives. "So you're him," Elliot said, "the one she was pretending I was." "I'm also your brother." Weston extended his hand. "If you're interested in getting to know each other." A long pause, then Elliot took his hand. "I don't know how to have a brother," he admitted. "Neither do I. We'll figure it out." Chapter 10. Our real wedding was held in Yellowstone, just as Weston had promised all those years ago. A little chapel near Old Faithful, with mountains in every direction and the sky so blue it hurt to look at. Garrett stood as best man. His scar faded to a thin white line. "Old Mr. Prescott gave me away," leaning on his cane with tears streaming down his face. Even Elliot came. He stood in the back, awkward and uncertain, but he came. Before the ceremony, Weston and I visited Grandpa's grave in Montana and the Memorial for Fallen Agents in Washington, D.C. We stood before the wall of stars at DEA headquarters, and Garrett said quietly, "These stars bear no names. But the wind remembers, the mountains remember, we remember." I closed my eyes and made a silent vow. May there be peace. May there be justice. May no more heroes have to die in the dark. The documentary aired while we were on our honeymoon in a cabin in the Rockies. We watched it on a borrowed laptop, huddled under quilts while snow fell outside. Schools organized viewings. Students visited memorials. Social media filled with messages from people who had never thought about the border, the agents, the silent war being waged in their name. The border is thousands of miles long. Every inch is held by heroes. They build walls with their bodies so we can sleep safely. That segment with the empty urns, I cried for hours. They were so young. I closed the laptop and looked at Weston, firelight flickering across his face. "They see you now," I said, "all of you." He pulled me close. "And I see you," he said. "That's all that matters." Epilogue. I walked through 7 years of darkness to reach the dawn, and the dawn taught me this. Every vigil ends, every wound becomes a testament, every love that refuses to die will find its way home. I don't know what comes next, but I know I won't face it alone. Because somewhere in the mountains the wind still carries the names of the fallen. And somewhere in my heart, Weston Reed is finally blessedly home. The end.